So for Lent this year, I decided to give up scrolling, and it's going okay. And by scrolling, I mean basically the activity is sitting there for a lengthy period of time, just kind of going passively through content, not really diving into anything specific, but just kind of like grazing and letting one's attention span just kind of go wild. It's really a problem for me, and I've spent a great number of hours in any given week basically just idly staring at a phone or a computer or anything else like that. And well, I would like to get that time back, which is why I decided to give up scrolling for Lent. And I've given up social media before on numerous occasions, and each time I always find something else to occupy that time, which is arguably almost, if not worse, than that. And yeah, this year is no exception. Whereas I've been spending a lot of time scrolling, well, now I've just started refreshing. Just over and over and over again, checking. And there's never anything there. There's never anything actually like on the screen when I look at it. And usually it's just information that I don't really need to know anyway. But there's this compulsion to get this little hit of, well, dopamine. Ding! And it doesn't have any sort of real need. The thing is, abstinence is not the same thing as sobriety. One can be completely abstinent of the object of their addiction. One can quit drinking entirely, not drink for years and years and years. One could completely quit social media, in my case, and just not even touch it again. But one will still be an addict if the motivation for that addiction is still there. If the displeasure, the uncomfortable sensation that leads me to want to check something or scroll, or which would lead an alcoholic to want to drink, if that uncomfortable sensation is still there and it's not managed, it's not dealt with, that hole is not plugged by something else, one is still an addict just as much. One is just a dry addict at that point. What I'm basically trying to do is get rid of this uncomfortable sensation, this like deep feeling of uncertainty and displeasure and lack of energy and affect and just, I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe, but it's like I have the need, the energy, the drive to do something, to be stimulated in some way, but without any of the energy necessary to actually actively do anything. There's a half dozen things I could do at any given moment. I could, respond to the messages that I've been ignoring, or I could, write a script for another video, or really anything. I could even just like watch something that's entertaining or interesting. But instead of doing that, I don't even feel the energy or the drive to even do something that's fun. It's more that I want to do something that just deadens the time, that just like cuts the time. And this kind of speaks to the nature of recreation and leisure in this age. It's much less a matter of actually engaging in something that's enjoyable. It's much more about cutting up the time, about passing or wasting the time that could be used for something else. Which is not to say that at every moment you need to be like productive or on or something like that. That's kind of a myth, kind of a fallacy, that it's this idea of capitalism where time is money and you always need to be doing something productive in order to have your time be valid or worthwhile. I reject that. I'm not on board with that. But what could be done, though, is at any given moment an exercise of the will, a desire to do something, whether it be something fun or something entertaining, something that's enriching, enjoyable, or even just something productive. But instead of doing that thing, there's an urge in leisure of this age to just slice that time up, to fragment it to the point where you don't experience the passage of time. And that's really the main motivation as to why I wanted to give up this kind of behavior. Because when I'm engaged in this endless scrolling, or any other behavior much like it, I don't notice the passage of time. And so hours, if not entire days, will pass when nothing has actually happened. Nothing notable, nothing measurable has happened. But yet the hours have somehow passed. Whereas I could have, in the same amount of time, like, driven halfway across the country, or, like, composed something interesting, or even just watched a couple of movies, or read half a book or something like that. Instead, I've done literally nothing. Like, all I've done is just absorb passive content. And yes, there are some days when that's all you really can do. You need to basically just anesthetize yourself so that the days pass and there's no sensation of the displeasure, the intense displeasure that comes along with a day like that. And typically my go-to for a really awful day, like a rotten day where, okay, I just give up, nothing's getting done, usually it's something like Sid Meier's Civilization or Stellaris or RimWorld or some video game like that. Something that is like an optimization simulator. Something where the goal of the game is not necessarily to win the game, but rather to optimize a system. Like a model railroad, like Transport Tycoon Deluxe is one of my go-tos, and it has been for, I don't know, almost 30 years now, because it is that old of a game and I've been playing it for about that long. Yes, the idea is that you're playing a transport company and you're trying to make as much money as possible, but the real goal is actually just to create a cool transport network, to build trains from this city to that city and feed this factory with this kind of materials and that sort of thing. So it's not really a matter of like intentional gaming, not intentional direction-oriented activity. It's more about feeling a sense of agency, feeling a sense of control. And yes, this is a theme that's popped up quite a number of times in these videos recently, where there is a persistent sensation within our society that we don't have agency in our lives. And that happens on a deep level. We're born into a world, thrust into a world that we didn't really have a say in making. We don't have any will over society's history or the current state that we're in. And given the economic model, we don't really even have all that much control in terms of what we do. We do have a lot of choice in terms of like what we do for a living. We can choose what job we want to do. We can choose what education we want to get in order to get that job and make money. But we don't have the option of not participating in this. We don't have the option of, not getting a job that makes money that can pay for the things that we need to pay for in this society. And for that matter, we don't really have all that much control over the powers that be, the government, the economic powers, that sort of thing. We don't really have all that much agency in terms of modifying that, manipulating that. Yes, we can vote, but we only get to do that once every couple of years, and it's not really a matter of voting for what you want, it's a matter of voting for who you want to do what they want to do. And so without the sensation of agency, there's this compulsion almost to gain a sense of control over one's life. And yes, this can appear in lots of different ways, and a lot of those are pretty toxic. And, well, my way of doing that is gaining control over a virtual space, or basically just gaining control over my own personal affect. And it's not a good way of gaining control of my affect. It's more about eliminating the experience of emotional affect altogether by diving into something with no affectual content or content that's predictable in terms of its affective content. So when I play one of these optimization games like Transport Tycoon, it's got very predictable and simple rules. I know exactly what's going to happen when I do this, that, and the next thing. I can even manipulate those rules if I really wanted to make the kind of system exactly the way I want it to be, have exactly this number of passengers going from this town to that town, and I can even design the map. It's not really a challenge. It's more a matter of devising a system that I feel like I'm in control of. And when it comes to scrolling or social media in general or any of those other sorts of behaviors, it's a sensation of being connected while also disconnected. Because I'm getting experiences of people's lives, or in the case of a non-immediate social network, I'm getting a sense for the rest of the world. But I have the option of not engaging with it. As in, I'm not going and reading the articles that I'm seeing, I'm not going in and engaging in this conversation, I'm seeing it happen, and I'm willingly not willing anything. Effectively, it's a persistent state of unwillingly being. I'm just being, but without exercising any sort of will over the world. And given how unpleasant that feels, given the negative affectual sensation that comes along with that, it's comforting to intentionally do that, to be able to control the lack of control that one has. I don't know, I'm still having trouble conceptualizing this, and I'm having some vague memories of some authors I've read about this and about boredom studies. I think I need to do a bit more research. I need to go back into the literature and understand this a bit better, because I've got a lot of conflicting ideas in my head about this topic. But there is something definitely wrong here, where the construct of our shared leisure time activities has become basically schizoaffective. It's become scattered, it's become disorganized, and that's what we find fun? There will be more about this later, I'm sure. Anyway, tomorrow I do have something relatively major planned. As a follow-up to the video I made last week, I didn't talk much about identity in that one, and so I want to do another high-effort video about identity and the construction of identity through narrative, and just how much of an influence that has on the way that we view the world and our political behavior, effectively. So stay tuned for that tomorrow. Drop back in tomorrow, and hope you enjoyed this content. If you did, definitely like the channel and subscribe and all that sort of stuff, and maybe check out one of these videos. And so thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.